Hello and welcome to my new video on Outrider modifications. I thought I'd start at the sketchbook for this. Firstly, I'm just going to explain what modifications I'm going to do and the nerdy reasons for doing it in the sci-fi setting that it's set in. So I quite like the Outrider. I certainly think it's an improvement on the old attack bikes of the Firstborn. However, it's still generally complained at as it would be useless in the sci-fi setting, being so low, no ground clearance, etc, etc. But I think it's just been a missed opportunity for better action sculpts. So that's basically what my modifications are going to be based around. So my idea is if you had a Space Marine motorbike in the 41st millennium, you would likely have some form of AI driven / machine spirit driven suspension that would allow the motorbike to be lowered so it's more stable when you're on flat roads, so it's easier to get on and off with power armour, so it reduces the silhouette in the distance. However, it would sense bad terrain and be able to lift itself up, particularly if the wheels were off the floor, to allow for maximum shock absorption on landing. With that in mind, that's what I want to show on the mod of modifications. So, therefore, I'm going to lower the front and rear wheel on one of the Outriders that's going to be essentially jumping after using a downed tow drone as a ramp. There's then going to be one Outrider doing essentially a wheelie, chasing down a tow with a chainsaw in hand. So the back wheel will remain up, but the front wheel will remain down. And then lastly, there'll be an attack bike essentially doing a power slide or a skid with opposite lock on, with the Marine drawing his bolter and shooting another tow. I will be putting them on bigger bases. Problems I imagine I'll have will be that the cutting the wheels off essentially to then lower them will probably be quite fiddly to do with a scalpel knife. Probably have to heat the blade up to cut them off, and then to glue them back on. I don't know if regular glue, super glue will do it, or if I'll have to break out a glue gun to essentially fill the voids and attach it that way. Now I've got the bare bikes assembled, it's time to start cutting. So with the first model that will be doing a wheelie essentially, I managed to put a V in the front wheel. See about there. After being cut off with a scalpel knife, I just put a V in with a Dremel, allowing it to fit on the corner onto the required place. I'll work out the angle with the glue. And the next Outrider is going to be the one doing the power slide or skid, whichever you like to look at it. So what I've done is I've cut the front wheel off and then cut one side off completely, which will be a gap that will need to be filled. And then for the other side, I have cut it and then sanded an edge on it so that when it sits on and is glued on, it'll be an angle. And then I'll fill the gap in the middle with either bits of sprue or some filler. Onto the jumping bike. Now the front wheel is glued in position like the others. It's just the back wheel to adjust. I've cut it off again, and then to extend it down, I've stuck some sprues in the middle, and that should allow it to be glued at the appropriate angle, something like that. It's kind of it might look in a bit, and that's just because if it was a swing arm, then it'd swing down that way, and this is what I'm trying to go for. However, I'm going to use a glue gun for this, just because it'll be easier. I can fill the gap up easier using less filler than later. And that is the bike modification complete. We've got the one that goes into a power slide with some steering lock on. And then we've got the wheeler one with the front suspension lowered. And then we've got the one in the jump with both suspension lowered. That of course will need filler for the back wheel, but I could do that at a later point when I've got all the other stuff on it. So I've got the rest of the bikes built up with the panel on the sides and the exhaust and the Marine's legs, and I did notice I had to trim the underneath so they fit properly around the front wheels that are now lowered. So as I'm going to have them as mini action shots against the tow, here the tow I've picked, I've got the drone which I'll be cutting down to fit in as like a ramp that one of the Outriders has hit, and then I've got a tow running which will be running for an Outrider, and then one throwing a grenade, which will be the one getting shot at by the Outrider. Naturally, the original bases aren't big enough, but I've got some polypropylene with a leather finish, so it'll look pretty good and it can still be used for any terrain that I'd want to put on them. What I have just found with this polypropylene, using that as a base, is that none of the glues particularly stick to it, so I'm going to use glue gun for it. It should work fine, but for added grip for the glue gun, I've drilled some holes so the glue can sit in. It's like foundations for the glue. So now I've glued the drone down into what is essentially a ramp position. I then got a drill bit and drilled what would be the side of the drone, and then stuck a old clear plastic stand down it to use as support for the jumping outrider. And then for the outrider itself, just drilled a hole through the back wheel at the appropriate angle so it'll sit on it nicely. And that leaves the jumping outrider ready for any points that need filling, and then terrain and paint as well. Next up we have the power slide outrider. This one has a towel glued to the base, throwing a grenade at the outrider. For gluing the towel down, same as before with the drone, just drilled some holes into the base and used a glue gun. It can be fettled up and used with terrain around the sides to make it look neater. It is worth noting that due to the handlebar change, the marine has to be leant forward, and when it's painted it will probably need the forearm adjusting, re-gluing so it fits on. The outrider can also be removed. It's just got a bolt coming through the bottom of the base, drilled through underneath, and same as before, drilled through the back wheel to hold it up. The front can be moved around so it can be changed a bit for when the terrain gets laid and the model gets painted. And lastly, for the outrider chasing down the tower wheeling, it was the same method used to secure the tower to the base as before. Also basically the same thing for the bike with the bolt through the base. And it just fits into the hole at the bottom to hold into place. It does need to be quite a long bolt to hold the position so that it goes further through the wheel, but it does work well. I have tried to offset it so it lines up with the chainsaw, and it does hold. And as you might have guessed, these are some old tower models. The first ones I ever got, I believe, hence the basic paintwork, but I thought they may as well get some reuse now. That brings us to the end of the video. I really like how these action poses look of the outriders. I think they fit really well and they add feasibility to the design. They were pretty fiddly though. This is just due to the fact that you have to use a scalpel knife heated up to cut through it. You can't use a Dremel because it takes too much material off, and then there ends up not being actually much plastic to glue together, so then you have to get a glue gun out. But I am still pleased at how they came out. As for the paint, I still do have the issue, as said in my previous Storm Speeder video, that I do have an eyesight issue, losing one eye, damaging the other, to the point where the detail is just an issue. So I don't know what I'm going to do with the paint, whether I'm going to leave it for a bit first and try to get better at painting, or if I'm going to try to get someone else to paint them. Please like and subscribe for more, and feel free to check out my other content, which ranges from things like this, like modifying a Storm Speeder as well, and also building my own functional power armour. Next up on the kit bashing route is going to be a devilfish and a hammerhead essentially combined into an XL 4-engine sized devil head. So see you in the next video.